Hello, and welcome to Day of Course Procedures. Our agenda for today talks about procedures, best practices in troubleshooting, setting up for the class, signing in participants, during your course, the end of your course, and after your course. Course procedures, setup. On the day of the course, the instructor is expected to arrive no later than 30 minutes prior to the scheduled course start time. The instructor will take this time to lay out the classroom for proper practice, connect and all necessary audio-visual equipment, assemble mannequins, and place the reference materials and handouts on the table. If you become ill after hours and cannot make it to the class at the last minute, call your training specialist or your training scheduler. If you can't get in touch with the PHSS staff, call 1-800-RED-CROSS with option 3 and let them know so that they can notify the student. If you can't get into the building, call your training specialist, training scheduler, or service delivery manager or logistics coordinator. Let's talk about mannequins, lungs, and faces. In most areas, we are able to have a 1-to-1 ratio, which means one student per each mannequin. But according to our instructor's manual, we should have a 1-to-2 at least. We want to make sure that with the layer dolls that we give faces to each participant and that we submerge them in 10% bleach solution for 10 minutes, that you dispose of the lungs, or you also can wipe the faces down with an alcohol or Clorox wipe and make sure that it remains wet for at least 1 minute and continue to wipe down the rest of the mannequin. Actars cannot be shared. You must have a 1-to-1 ratio with those. And they all have their own lungs, and all mannequin parts must be wiped down and remain wet for 1 minute. The Preston mannequin, we use a 1-to-1 ratio. The lung is disposed, and all mannequin parts will need to be wiped down and remain wet for 1 minute. Our AEDs, we like to have one AED for each student with a 1-to-2 ratio. For AEDs, ensure that participants do not attach one pad to the other pad because it will destroy it. If the AEDs malfunction, it's a good practice just to use one AED and have all the participants follow along. Even when I have a bunch of good AEDs, I really just turn on one so that you don't have a bunch of them talking at one time. Course procedures, when we talk about our reference materials and training kits, it's a best practice to have all those handouts, those reference materials, the training kits, already laid out on the table so that when the participants come in, they can start reading and reviewing them as they enter and sit down for the course. It also kind of keeps them busy so that you can continue to set up. The library materials we use are the Adult Ready Reference Card, the Pediatric Ready Reference Card, and the Professional Rescuer Handbook. We don't want them removed from the classroom, but remind participants that they can go to redcross.org and download these free. Handouts for the participants to take home include the butt slip for the digital cert or a business card, the volunteer opportunity flyer, and the PHSS business card that contains the training support center number and website. Handouts for participants that they will not take home include the flyer for the first aid app, the student evaluation, and the health and safety precautions. Other handouts and flyers may become standard issue or recommended by your training specialist. For example, seasonal coupons, offers, event flyers. Make sure to stay in tune with the updates from your supervisor for handout changes or additions. Course procedures, taking home. Here's the picture of the digital cert flyer, the volunteer recruitment flyer, and the business card. Handouts that you're going to take back up are the SMART app, the health precautions, and the CAP survey. Course procedures, documentation, and training records. We're going to talk about community, and we're going to talk about full service. So with the community, typically a course record is pre-populated, and it has a list of the students with their contact information. And you want to make sure that you have the students review their information as they come into the classroom and make sure that they fill in any missing information and verify the information there. With a full service, typically those are contracted, and we don't have the names in advance, and there's no pre-populated roster, meaning that they're going to have to enter their name and their contact information on an addendum. You've got to make sure that you fill out the top sheet of the addendum as well as the student roster. Make sure that it is legible, that everybody can read it. Here is a copy of a pre-populated course record that you could receive for a community class. Make sure that you sign it. Make sure that you put the course components in the grades. Make sure that you have your name on it. And make sure that when you call it in, that you put in the case number, the date of the call, the time, and the name of the agent. Note any comments that we may need to know in advance. Here's a copy of a blank course record front and back that you would use for full service courses. Course procedures. Students on the pre-printed roster, but he or her information is missing or incorrect. Have them go back and write it correctly. If the student's not printed on the roster, have them fill in their information on an official Red Cross addendum. So you're going to have extra addendum. And what happens if you don't have a pre-printed roster for a course? We want you to use the correct Red Cross addendum and top sheet. A student did not write their information legibly on the addendum. If the student signed in and it's ineligible, then cross out that entry and have them re-enter their name. It could be as easy that you kind of look through it and you say, oh, what does this mean? And just go back and confirm, and you cross it out and you put it in. Many or most students don't write legible, and so if you have multiple students who don't enter their information, you may need to destroy it and start over again. Students that don't have an email or address or doesn't want to provide them, make sure that you write in bold letters, no email address. And email addresses should not be shared because a bunch of them won't go to one address. So each person has to have their own email because it will cause errors when the digital certs are sent out. Registration issues. Community courses require that a student is pre-registered to receive a certification. So if the student approaches you and saying, hey, I didn't register, go ahead and let them call 1-800-RED CROSS, option 3 before the course starts or during a break. Always welcome the student to stay regardless of the outcome. We'll worry about the payment, the registration later. Troubleshooting. So, if the student didn't pre-register for the course, we're going to have them call 1-800-RED CROSS, and we're not going to accept any money. We're going to worry about that later. But if they get 1-800-RED CROSS, they may be able to go ahead and register with their credit card. A student registered at the last minute into the community course and it's not on your pre-printed course record, don't turn them away. Welcome. Ask if they've got an order number. Get out another addendum, put it in, and put the order number. What happens if you have a student that comes in for the blended learning course and they didn't complete the pre-course? Don't turn them away. Welcome them in, and just let them know that at the end they're going to take a written test. And if they pass, we'll give them a completion. Now, if they say, no, I don't want to do that, then you can say, okay, let's call the Training Support Center and get you into another class. What if the student comes in and says, oh, this isn't the right class? Then we should not advise them on whether or not a student should be taking the course they're enrolled in, because they're responsible for communicating with their employer or their educational institution. So if they think they're in the wrong one, we can always refer them to that 1-800-RED Cross. During the course, you must be using your instructor's manual the entire time. You must conduct every activity. You must play all the necessary video segments and have the students practice all of the required skills. Remember, where you get those skills are from your participants log. If you've got AEDs that aren't working, remember, you really just need one. If you're having trouble with your equipment that's malfunctioning in the middle of the class and you can't play the DVD, look at the alternatives. Look for other televisions, computers. You might have to move the students into another area. If you can't find another TV or alternative way to do it, contact your training specialist and make sure that you make a note on your after-action report. What happens if a student becomes ill or injured during the course? For example, they have allergic reaction. Have them wash their face and hands with soap and water. If it becomes life-threatening, do 911. Make sure you fill out an incident report and notify your training specialist immediately, and you also make note of that on your after-action report. If a student fails the class because they're not meeting the criteria for passing, have the participant call 1-800 to explain the situation, and the TSC will escalate it to the staff as needed and make a note. Now, most of the time, the 1-800-RED Cross is not the option, that we can take care of it later once we see it on the after-action report. Course breaks. For full-service courses, make sure you've reviewed the contract and discussed with the customer their break preferences and adhere to these. For community classes, you should provide one 15-minute break for every 4 hours of class. For community classes, meal breaks should be given if a course is scheduled for 5 or more. We typically schedule community courses approximately to accommodate a meal. For example, if we're going 9 to 4, we'll allow for a comfortable mealtime noon break. At the end of the course, we want to make sure we do our end-of-course scenarios as instructed in your instructor's manual. Ask your participants to help you pick up and put the course materials away, and they can help straighten up the tables, the whole 10 yards. If the course requires written examination, then make sure you distribute the test and the grade the test and let them see what they've missed. Make sure that you do your CAP surveys, which is the student eval, at the end of every course. The after-action report is so important because it documents any issues, any customer complaints, any student concerns, so make sure you're doing those. And for community classes, you have 2 hours to call in the student's grade to the Training Support Center at 1-800-RED Cross. For full-service courses, you don't call in the student's grade, but you have to submit the paperwork by email or fax. So, to break down, collect and put away materials. That's your library stuff, your participants' handbooks, precautions. Clean and organize. Make sure that you've got all the trash up, the cans, the cups, the wrappers, the bags. Arrange the chairs and tables in the positions you found it. Decontaminate the mannequins. Make copies of documents if you're running low. We want to leave that classroom cleaner than what we found it. And prepare for your departure. Turn off the lights, turn off the equipment, set the alarm, lock down that building. The roster, make sure that you call in the grades within 2 hours, you note the agent's time and case number, and send that record to the service delivery admin electronically by the end of the same day. Course addendum, if you're teaching that full service course, remember you don't call it in. You submit the course record electronically to the service delivery admin by that same day. After action reports, you're going to attach it with the course roster and send it electronically. And CAP surveys, you're going to send by snail mail, postmarked within 24 hours of the end of the course. Again, here's a copy of a course record. And here is a copy of the call-in script that you're going to call in to the TSC for community classes at 1-800-RED Cross within 2 hours of a community class ending. Again, here's a copy of a course addendum and a course record. The after action report. This is what is so important. On this, you can also add if someone says, oh, I want to be a volunteer instructor. That's a good place to put this. Or if they say, oh, I'm interested in becoming a lifeguard, you could add that information. Anything that is important, complaints or anything, don't let us be surprised. Let us know with this. Here's your CAP survey. It has to be done on every course you do, no exception. All right, and then you're going to send all these training records and after action report either by email or fax to the appropriate person within your territory. All right, and the CAP surveys you're going to send by snail mail or through the mail to a designated area. To review, arrive 30 minutes early, set up the classroom, the mannequins, the AEDs, lay out your printed materials and training kits, and have your participants sign in. During your course, use your instructor's manual. Don't skip around. Use your course presentation of the DVD. We prefer you use the course presentation. Make sure you're providing book breaks. Have those participants follow along with the ready reference cards or the participant's handbook. At the end of the course, make sure that they complete the end of course scenario and the final written exam if it's required. Organize and clean that classroom. Leave it cleaner than it was when you got there. Have the students fill out the CAP surveys and snail mail those away. If required, you're going to lock up that building and set the alarm. For community classes, you're going to call in the grades to the TFC within 2 hours of the course and submit all paperwork to the service delivery admin electronically. You taught to save lives. Good job.